budget, bikeways and pedestrian access.
Yes, sir. Just a second.
All right.
Sorry, here we go. I was so ready for my other item. The administration is, afternoon, everyone. The administration is requesting a supplemental appropriation of state funds totaling $480,000 to the bikeways and pedestrian access bulk capital project. These funds will be used for the construction of an at-grade crossing at Bloomsbury Avenue for the Short Line Trail in Catonsville. The proposed $480,331 supplemental appropriation is in the Catonsville area. The project will be a critical link between the eastern and western sections of the Short Line Trail, which will offer residents an off-road means to access key destinations and become part of the growing network of trails and on-road bicycle facilities in Catonsville. The county is responsible for the design and reconstruction of the crossing and will assume all maintenance and operating costs upon completion, which are estimated to be a total of $1,500 annually. The department advises that our design is currently 95% complete in the final stages, and construction is expected to begin in spring 2025 and take about 5 months to complete. That ends my testimony on that item, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Any questions or comments from the members?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Quirk.
Yeah, and I just want to thank Ms. Walker and everybody who's been working hard on this. Kim Lampier and Dave Whitaker, they were married couple. Unfortunately, both have passed away. They were super advocates for especially all things bicycling. And so this is something I know near and dear to the community. It's been a long time in the making, and just want to thank the county exec's office really for running with this. And I know Catonsville Rails to Trails has been absolutely amazing force for good out there with Sheldon Smith and the Marion Sweeney Smith and the whole crew. So I really do appreciate this one and appreciate the effort put into it. So definitely, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilman Quirk. And no, go right ahead. Who was that?
It's Wade.
Oh, Councilman. Go right ahead.
D'Andrea, what is this going to look like? We have a problem with the state hike bike trail crossing Paper Mill Road, and we've had deaths there because it's not the safest situation. What does this crossing look like? Can you describe it?
Besides it being a trail, it's a bike and a hiking trail.
Is it going to have? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Is it going to have what?
Is it going to have lights or warning signs, or how is this going to make it safe? Because as I said, we've had a lot of problems on Paper Mill Road with the crossing that's there now, which the state has invested a lot of money, but there still are accidents and people. In fact, I think within the last 6 months, someone was killed at that crossing. So I was just wondering, if you don't know I understand you haven't seen the design yet, but I'm just curious as to what it's going to look like, how it's going to alert traffic that there's this crossing in front of them, and exactly what's going to be there.
Okay, so what I can do, sir, is I can send you a copy of the design that we currently have.
Okay,
Again, it's not completely done. The design is not completely done, but we can send you a copy of the design that we have in place. But we also use a lot of signage and also take the safety into consideration for the bikers and the hikers when we are building this. But I can send it to you so that you can see.
good. And I'll send it to the state because I think that obviously it's newer than what we have on Paper Mill Road. So hopefully it has some advances that maybe the state could adopt with the hike bike trail that we have in northern Baltimore County. Thank you.
And Ms.
So
Walker,
the state did approve this, and this grant is a grant from the state, but they've seen it, and that's why they gave us more money for construction. But I'll send it to you so that you have it.
and Ms. Walker, if you could send to my office as well, so we can share with the local community and also the local paper. You know, when I first came into office, the Short Line Trail was literally one of the first things we worked on at the time with county executive cabinets to really try to take a lot of those old railroad right-of-ways and try to consolidate it. And so this is a great to see this. And again, job well done with your department and also with Kingsville Rails to Trails. It's not just talking about the things. I love the fact with this administration that you can have a conversation, then 6-12 months later, you see some of it happening. And it's just great to see. So I love the focus on the walking and biking, and it's great stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Burke, Councilman Katz. And I agree that this administration has been making tremendous strides in terms of biking and walking accessibility throughout Baltimore County. Ms. Walker, if there is any more questions or comments from the members? Hearing none, we will go right on to some fiscal matters while we have you. And we'll go on to page 25, where you can talk about the two contracts, one with Dillon Bus Service and the other Mobile Dredging.
Well, I'm excited, Mr. Chair and council members, to bring you all the circulator bus service contract. The administration is requesting approval of a contract with Coach USA through its subsidiary Dillon's Bus Service to provide circulator bus service throughout the Towson area as a pilot program. The contract will commence upon council approval for 3 years and will renew automatically for 2 additional 2-year periods with options to extend the initial term or renewal term an additional 90 days. It's important to note that compensation may not exceed $27 million for the entire 7 years, 3-month period, including the renewal and extension period. Just some background on the contract itself. The contractor will operate and provide services related to 2 routes throughout the Towson area as our pilot program. They will operate these services out of our Kearney Park and Ride location. However, the maintenance will be done out of their facility. The county has provided buses for this service. We will also provide the fuel for this service that's necessary for the buses. The contractor will be responsible for the day-to-day operations, maintenance and operations. And some of the things that are included in that is the service planning, the operations, the employment of the transit operations staff, and the utility staff, which is the maintenance staff that will be responsible for the internal cleaning of the buses. The technology that will be on the buses, we are excited to say that we have vehicle locators on the buses. We will have security cameras on the buses, as well as automated voice announcement equipment, which does automatic people counter equipment as well on the buses. The contractor will also be responsible for transit information system. We are now going to be required to take the National Transit Database with information from Baltimore County. So they will be responsible for that as well. We did include in the contract that the contractor do an integrated marketing program for our bus service to encourage ridership from around the county and to go out and do outreach for the circulator program. So this contract is broken down into two phases. Phase one is the startup activities for the contract, and that includes developing an operations plan, conducting inventories of the equipment, the security service. They're required to hire and train the employees on the bus routes, and the administrative personnel and the computer specialists as well. We'll have a call center also at our location that Dillon's will be operating out of, because we want the residents to be able to call an 877 number and be able to get information about the bus service at their fingertips. So we also have that as a part of this contract that we will be setting up as phase one. Phase two of the contract includes the operations of the services. We anticipate that the services will start within the next 90 days, hopefully, of this contract being awarded. So we're excited to get it all kicked off. And what that means is that after we go through phase one of the startup, you will start to see signs out at the different bus stops, and you'll start to see the buses ride where they're start to do training. And we expect our annual ridership for both of these routes to be 250,000 to 300,000 passengers over a 2-year time frame. This service will be free of charge, and it will be going to main attractions like GBMC, Shepherd Pratt, St. Joe's, Towson University, and other destinations. We do have our routes on route boards already. And we've also included in here, because if the pilot does work out well, we hope to expand service. We did include in here an increase of revenue service by 25%, and that if we need to add weekend or holiday service in high performing areas, there is an avenue within this contract for us to be able to do that as well. This was a competitive process. We had 5 proposals that were received. 1 was deemed non-responsive, and we also have a 20% DBE goal on this contract. And with that, I'll take any questions about our Towson Circulator contract.
Councilman Marks,
I didn't even raise my hand.
you don't have to raise your hand. We've been hearing you for the last 7 or 8 years. I'm not sure how long it's been, but you have been a driving force behind this, and I'm very proud for you that this day is actually happening. So go ahead, take it away, Councilman Marks.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Walker, as well. I want to thank the county executive. So we've been working on this for 11 years. The county council has been very supportive in the past. Many stakeholder organizations have contributed to where we are today, but the county executive's support was really critical here. As I've said many times, in downtown Towson, we cannot build any more highways. We have to improve mobility. We have to have more sidewalks, more biking, and yes, public transit where it will be used. I think what's very novel about the county executive's approach is that this type of model can be used elsewhere in the county. If it works here, we might have a loop someday in Owings Mills. We might have a loop, there you go. We might have a loop in White Marsh. We might have a loop at Trade Point Atlantic. I mean, there's a role for these nimble transit services that aren't, fixed guideway, that can be easily duplicated, and I think can really help mobility throughout the county. The one thing I will add about this contract is keep in mind it is over a multi-year period, and also keep in mind, I believe the administration is going to be seeking state support through the LOTS program. We are using some of our stimulus money for the initial stages. Our federal partners were helpful, so we will hopefully be receiving some support from the State Department of Transportation as we move forward. But thank you very much, Ms. Walker, for all your support. I'm really excited to see this moving forward.
Mr.
Thank you,
Chair,
Councilman Marks. Yes, Councilman Cat?
yes, Deandra, can you tell me where the negotiations are to, for the county to purchase the, state-owned land on, Padonia Road and I-83, Falls Road, Padonia, et cetera. Not Padonia, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. On I-83 and Joppa Road.
I'm not sure. I know that we are interested and we have told the state that we are interested in that location. Real estate compliance actually takes that portion over when they go around and try to purchase land for other locations that we have. But I want to say to you, sir, that I know that you're concerned about the area that we are at, Carney Park and Ride. We are actively looking for a permanent location for bus service throughout the county. As a matter of fact, one of the earmark requests that we made to Congress was for another location, a permanent larger facility, in order for us to be able to have a headquarters for transit here in Baltimore County. So this is only a temporary location for us at the Carney Park and Ride location.
So that's very good news because the people in Kearney are very upset about it because this Towson circulator does not serve them or their community at all. The only thing they're going to have is this temporary headquarters. Very upset about it. But let me ask you another question. If ridership does not meet the expectations, is Baltimore County still obligated to this company to continue to pay them this money for the service? You know, the light rail is the biggest failure of mass transit in Maryland. The ridership is so bad that the fare box return is only 16%. So, I'm hoping that the Towson circulator will be successful. But if it's not, can we back out?
So it's important to note that our contract does give us an option to no longer continue with the contract with 30 days notice. We do expect for the ridership to be in that 250,000 seats ride, right? So we do expect that. We do have the ability to make adjustments to the service routes. That is part of the service planning that the contractor offers us. But the bigger question that you have is that if it's not performing in the way that the county is expecting for it to perform, we do have an out in the contract where we can move out of the contract. Yes, sir, we do.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Now, Ms. Walker? Ms. Walker,
Yes, sir.
I want to ask you to please continue to work with Councilman Cash to make sure that we can mitigate any impacts on the community. And I want to thank Councilman Cash for the work he's done on this.
We are, Councilman Marks, we are committed to working with Councilman Cash. Last week, unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the meeting, but Elizabeth was able to attend the meeting as well as some other staff. And we will continue to listen to the community and make sure that we're hearing their concerns and we're addressing their concerns. I saw today, we're adding even more trees so that there's no impact in the neighborhood and so that we make it look presentable. We are not trying to upset the neighborhood. We want to continue to be partners with the community. So that is of top importance to the administration and to the county executive, and we will continue to listen to the community as well as continue to look for a permanent site for transit in Baltimore County.
Thank you. He's a very good advocate for his community, and I just wanted to say that. So thank you.
Well,
Mr. Chair.
Let's go right ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Walker, I'd just like to ask about the bid process itself because, and how the solicitations rolled out, because I'm a little surprised that only 5 bus companies placed a bid for the contract because that industry, that sector was hurt so badly during the COVID epidemic where no one was really using bus tour services for a year and a half. And so I know that some of the operators in my district were absolutely devastated. And just want to know if we reached out to a sufficient number of tour bus operators and a little bit more detail on the bid process.
So the bid process went through email and marketplace. We have an opportunity, if you have a NAIC code that says that you provide transportation, you should have automatically received a copy of our RFP that we put on the street. In addition, we added our RFP to mass transit, where most RFPs, procurements associated with transportation are advertised. Most people in the transportation industry receives regular emails from mass transit. So we did do some outreach to make sure those outlets where transportation companies typically look for work, that our RFP was actually advertised in those areas as well. One of the things that's unique about our contract is that we only have 2 routes. We have 2 routes and we did not have a maintenance facility for them. So you also need, it needs to be cost beneficial to the transit advocates, the transportation companies, when they have to also have a maintenance facility in order to be able to provide the service. So I think that may have had a little bit to do with it, but I think that 5 contracts is good competition for Baltimore County.
I know that some, we all had to be nimble during the pandemic. And so, for example, Superior Tours is a company that's located in the 2nd district. And I know that they typically would not do transit-oriented work, but during the pandemic, they were really happy to get any kind of work that they could get because they had to be nimble on their feet, on their wheels, I should say. And so that's the nature of my question, is to try to get businesses that were so badly devastated where they had to, I think a lot of people are using the word pivot nowadays, and just to try to help businesses by doing something that they normally don't do, but certainly are capable of, and particularly tourism. In the tourism business, whether it's on wheels or in rooms, that's the nature of my question. I'll just say that.
Mm-hmm. So it's also important to note that the contract required that they have planning experience and that they have done transit service equal to the size of service that we're talking about or greater. So you had to have certain qualifications in order to even make the cut. So if they're doing tours, they may not, and they had not done fixed route service, they may not have made the cut. So
Right.
they look at that as well.
Yeah, I mean, their typical type of work is you meet at a shopping center and then you go to New York for the day or some other destination for a couple of days. But well, maybe in the future, if there's opportunities to help bring those industries along, we can reach out to them.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions or comments, I'll just add that congratulations again. We look forward to the pilot working out well, and we look forward to a day when we can talk about a pilot here in Owings Mill. I think we can certainly use one. I think it's a good move, and it's going to be very beneficial to the citizens of Baltimore County. So, Ms. Walker, you have another one. Mobile dredging. Page 25.
Okay. One more. The administration is requesting approval of a contract with Mobile Dredging and Video Pipe to provide on-call sanitary sewer and stormwater inspection and cleaning services on an as-needed basis. The contract will commence upon council approval for 1 year and renew automatically for 4 additional 1-year periods with the option to extend the initial term or any renewal term an additional 120 days. Compensation may not exceed 15 million for the entire 5-year, 4-month period, including the renewal and the extension. The contractor in particular will furnish all necessary labor, materials, supervision, and equipment to provide on-call inspection and cleaning services for sanitary and stormwater collection systems throughout the county. Services will be provided for projects that primarily relate to the county's 2005 consent decree for the elimination of sanitary sewer overflows. Services include the cleaning, inspection of sanitary and stormwater system pipes, inspection and or GPS surveys of manholes and structures, smoke testing, dive water testing, dive water flooding, and must be performed in compliance with the county standards and specifications. The county awarded the contract through a competitive procurement process. No other bids were received and there's also a 25% MWBE participation requirement on this contract. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments from the members? Hearing none, thank you very much, Ms. Walker.
Thank you.
Again, our condolences. And now we move on to page 6, Mr. Thomas Joseph, Department of Aging and Disability Resource Center.
Good afternoon, Council Chair, members of Council. I'm subbing for Laura Riley, who is taking a well-deserved vacation. She will be back for the Tuesday regular council meeting. The administration is requesting a supplemental appropriation of federal funds totaling $100,000 to the Aging and Disability Resource Center program. This program provides information and assistance to Baltimore County adults over the age of 60, disabled individuals over the age of 18 and their families and caregivers. The funds will be used to provide for typical program expenses involved with efforts to provide counseling resources, outreach services, and information materials. This program has provided approximately 80,000 units of information to clients via phone or in person throughout the current fiscal year. That in-person number has obviously been very low because we've just now recently started the in-person again. So most of the information has been delivered via email and via phone call.
Thank you very much. Are any questions or comments from the members? Hearing none, Mr. Joseph, we'll move right along to page 33 and 3 contracts from assisted living service.
Thank you. The administration is requesting approval of 3 contracts to provide assisted living care for eligible county residents age 62 and older who meet income and eligibility requirements. Each of these 3 contracts commence July 1, 2021, and will continue through June 30, 2022, and will have the option to renew annually for 4 additional years. The county will use state funds to pay contractors a subsidy amount up to $1,000 per month per client based on the client's income. Estimated compensation for all contractors providing these services total $789,718 for fiscal year 2022 and $3,948,590 for the entire 5-year term, including the renewal periods. Including these 3 contractors, we will have 29 total contractors provided assisted living services. On June 7th of this year, the council previously approved 23 similar contracts for assisted living services. The number of clients served per year depends on client longevity, changing service needs, and state funding levels. Aging served 101 clients in FY 2020. We have 96 clients. We've served 96 clients so far this current fiscal year, and we currently have 66 active clients. At this time, there is no waiting list for services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph. Are there any questions or comments from the members? Hearing none, thank you again. We'll move on to page 52. Mr. Pete Gutwall, Director of Permits Approval and Inspection. Gutwall, Resolution 86-21.
21. Good afternoon or evening, everybody. Resolution 8621 amends the local open space waiver fee schedule pursuant to section 32.6-108 of the Baltimore County Code. This is pretty much aligning the fee waiver, the waiver fee, along with the tier designations, which were changed in the code a few years back. The Department of Planning, when I was as the director there, we organized a work group of outside and inside individuals, including the county council, to review the schedule of the fees. We went through a process analyzing different methodologies of how we could align the tier designations with the resolution. We did an analysis of assessments of properties. We also looked at the current values of what's becoming across through the development review process of resolution of fees associated with the waiver. And then we created a hybrid model. The work group recommended a hybrid model associated with that to align the tier designations outlined in the code from projects outside the urban rural demarcation line, single family detached, semi-detached, commercial, town center core, residential apartment elevator, RAE projects, TOD projects, multifamily, student dormitories in the downtown Towson district. Based on that tier designations and the way we modified some of the existing fee resolutions, when we did the analysis, it kind of showed that some of the fees associated with the current resolution, if you will, by zoning classification, kind of aligned to the tier designations when you collapsed and organized them within those tier designations and came up with that price. So the resolution is recommending the following fees for each tier. For tier 1, it's 45 cents per square foot. For tier 2, it's $3.51 per square foot. For tier 3, it's $5,000 per 25 units because that is the commercial, CT, RA, and TOD. Tier 4 is multifamily. That's $5.05 per square foot. Tier 5, dormitories and purposely built student housing. Elderly and senior housing is $5,000 per 25 units. Tier 5B, which is affordable housing, we did separate that. I should mention we did have a discussion. There's a lot of discussions of how to address these things, whether to put these sliding scales or to provide sort of what reductions to these types of units and developments. So they did create a sliding scale for affordable housing for $0 for the first 50 units, and then $2,500 per 25 units above 50 units. And finally, tier 6 is the downtown Towson district at $2,000 per unit. Again, I'll just reiterate the idea here was to align the fee schedule. We've been living sort of in a no man's land the last couple of years in PAI of aligning the fee schedule with, or the waiver fee resolution with the tier designations as identified in the code. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gutwall. Any questions or comments from the members?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilman Catch.
Yeah, looking at the fee for affordable housing. So what you're saying, if the developer is not going to provide open space, required open space, that for affordable housing, the developer for the first 50 units, the fee is $0. Does that mean that you could have affordable housing with no open space?
Well, no, the standard still applies for 1,000 square foot. What you're getting a break if they can't provide it on site, the fee, that's technically yes, because the fee allows a break in for the first 50 units for affordable housing. That was a topic of conversation with I can tell you with the work group We discussed it at length, trying to rectify, everybody needs open space, but also balancing that with the ability to provide affordable housing. So, yeah, technically, if they can't provide it, they get a break on the first 50 units for no fee to be paid.
I think that
Ridiculous.
with the importance of open space, I think this is a mistake. I really do. If anything, people who are living in poverty, etc., many don't have access to open space. And I can't believe that we would be building affordable housing for the first 50 units with no open space. And let me just say that I am going to take a look at this and see how I can amend this so that there'll be some guarantee of open space for the families that move into these developments. I understand the decision that you had to make between providing affordable housing for people and open space. So you chose that it's maybe more important for affordable housing than to provide the open space. I totally understand the decision, and I'm sure it was a very difficult one.
Yeah, I believe the previous fee required none for any affordable housing. I think it was $0 for any development with affordable housing, if I recall correctly. I have to look back at my notes. But I would also mention that Director Lafferty is heading up the standard associated with open space was a big topic of conversation as well. And Director Lafferty has set up a work group to start talking about the standards and what they should be for the different types of uses and locations throughout the county. So just FYI, there is more work to come.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, Ms. Bevins?
Can I please say something, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Bevins?
Councilman Catch, thank you very much. You beat me to the punch on that one. I'm sorry, I find it inexcusable. I agree with Councilman Catch wholeheartedly. The message that you are sending to people living in affordable housing is you don't deserve open space. You will not have any green space. And they already build these neighborhoods in communities where the land is the cheapest. We already know that. They don't build affordable housing in the expensive neighborhoods. So they already are building in the cheapest parts of the county to begin with. And I just can't believe that we've had such stringent policies in place to secure green space. And it makes no difference that we would take the green space that they're not going to get and put it somewhere else because they're not going to get any use from it. It makes absolutely no sense to me, and I will not support it. Absolutely not.
Thank you, Ms. Bevins. Mr. Gutwall, you want to respond or you want to wait for? Councilman?
I understand completely. It was a topic of conversation. I totally understand where, I can only say I can understand where the work group, this is where the work group consensus landed on it, because they were trying to balance the housing needs for individuals versus open space. And it was a back and forth. And I
appreciate the work you've done on it, but somebody needs to go back in there and figure it out because it is a terrible, terrible message that we would be sending to people that will eventually live in these communities.
Okay.
Might as well be living. They might as well be living in the inner city where all they have is concrete surrounding them and a shade tree here and a shade tree there. It makes no sense to be living in Baltimore County and not have any green space. I don't care what kind of housing we're building. It just doesn't make sense to me. And the county executive is about being green and is about being fair and he's about taking care of all people in Baltimore County. And I think this is a very bad decision.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bevins and Councilman
Chair.
Hoker.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with you, Councilwoman Bevins and Councilman Couch. I also think that the reason the county executive stood up an affordable housing work group is to examine issues that we can meet our voluntary compliance agreement, not in a way that hamstrings affordable housing communities into being tight without amenities that other communities have. And I also don't think that we should hamstring the work group from making solid recommendations that makes affordable housing a community that's vibrant and having a good quality of life. And, you know, green space is part of that. I think if you go to anyone that studies social determinants of health, you'll find that green space is a key component to that. And at the end of the day, we all ran for office and we all are in the places that we are because we do desire the highest quality of life that we can provide to our respective constituents by the actions we take and not by inactions and letting something like this go by without having a say in it.
Thank you, Councilman Bacoka. Councilman Marks?
Thank you very much. You know, I understand the public policy issue of addressing the affordable housing agreement. You know, but we have heard the same arguments before. That the developments in downtown Towson used to be exempt from open space. And my colleagues and I amended this schedule in 2015 to require $2,000 per unit in downtown Towson. I'll also add that developers already get $3 million of incentives in our budget to help with the affordable housing goals. Having said that, Mr. Gutwald, my question to you is, was there a vote taken of all the members of this group? Was there a physical vote of all the stakeholder representatives?
It was basically done by consensus. So it wasn't a straw vote or anything like that. Yeah.
Well, I asked that because, you know, the Green Towson Alliance was very strong in opposing the Red Maple project, but which contributes nothing in an open space funding. And they were part of this group, and I mean, no disrespect to them, but I'm just curious about, you know, whether there was an actual vote. Neighbor Space of Baltimore County was part of this group. I was attacked on a piece of legislation last month that sought to modify the open space fees in Perry Hall on a project that had 5 parks nearby. Most affordable housing projects, in my mind, are being built in urbanized areas, not where there's parks. And it's puzzling to me why I haven't seen the level of opposition to this resolution from those groups that I saw last month concerning 4 acres in Perry Hall. Where are they? I got a lot of emails last month. I haven't gotten many emails about this. It's not a criticism of you, Mr. Gutwald. I know you have a tough job. It is an observation about the way one bill was treated last month and the way a resolution is being treated today. But I agree with my colleagues. I think we need to modify this. I think we need to work with the county executive. Like I said, I understand the public policy dilemmas you were facing.
Thank you. Are there,
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Crandall? And then Councilman Burke.
Thank you, Chairman Jones. I'll be brief because I think my colleagues have expressed a lot of my opinions on this. In brevity, I'll just say that to me, whether development is affordable housing or not, a development is a development, and they deserve similar treatment. And Councilman Marks already mentioned some incentives. Much of the affordable housing in Baltimore County that has been built or being built or being proposed to being built receives incentives from the state as well. So how many incentives do these developers need? And I'm not trying to, call them these evil developers, because developers have invested in all of our districts into wonderful projects. But how many incentives do they need when they know that they're going to rent these units and make money doing so? So I'm not sure that I fully understand how this $0 fee in lieu of open space. I'm not sure how much of an incentive that is, and I just don't understand how an affordable housing unit, workforce housing, whatever you want to call it, that is already subsidized, how that should be treated than any other development, such as the ones that David Marks referred to in Towson. And I feel like this council and the previous council, we have supported more open space policies in a positive way than probably previous councils combined. I think that we've always been there as advocates for open space for our projects in our communities, and this seems just detrimental to the mission that we've been on. So I'll just end with that, and thank you, Chairman Jones, for the time.
No problem. Thank you, Councilman Fanley. Yes, Councilman Burke. And then you, Councilwoman Bennett.
Thank you. I have a question.
Thank you, Chairman Jones. Mr. Gutwald, obviously with this resolution repealing mix of zone-based and user-based fee structures, really replacing it completely with a tier fee structure. I'm sure this group that looked at all these fees and different tiering categories looked at how the county compares versus other counties in regard to this exact issue. Can you tell us sort of how do we, I mean, a big picture overview, it would take all night to really go line by line, but how does the county look in relation to other counties nearby? Do other counties do the same tiering structure? Do they do more of the zone or kind of a user-based fee structure? And then I guess the second question would be like, how do we compare from a per unit or square foot or basis? So I guess it's a bigger picture type of question I'm trying to understand. Thank you.
There's two different methodologies that are basically identified, which puts us in a different bucket, if you will, when you compare to other jurisdictions. There's one method of applying this as an adequate public facilities ordinance, and there's usually some sort of test that's done to determine what is the deficiency, which was a big conversation within the work group. And then there's the methodology of just applying a standard that goes along with every development. Therefore, for every development, as being discussed, provides a certain amount of open space based on the type of development and the amount of acreage that's required for that type of development. So there's two methodologies that are basically utilized throughout different jurisdictions. Baltimore County is structured that this is part of the adequate public facilities. However, it's given a standard of 1,000 units per square foot. So there's no deficiency study that is basically assessed when identifying that dollar amount or identifying the amount of open space that's required. In terms of fee structures, they usually designate by geographic area, like within a designated growth area and outside a designated growth area. There is that difference because the acreage is the dollar amount is different. But I'm not aware of anything that went into this level of detail in terms of distinguishing the different designations throughout any jurisdiction. So it's a hybrid. It's my best overall answer to your question.
Okay, thank you very much. You done, Councilman?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilwoman Bennett.
Mr. Gutwald, I just have a question. Did you hear from NeighborSpace on these local open space waiver fees?
Yeah, they were part of the work group.
They were part of the work group.
Yeah, they were part of the work group. I mean, I think I think that conversations and the discussions that you all
I
are
just
saying
wanted
was
you to
part of
say
the,
it. I just wanted you to say that out loud. Thank you. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Okay.
So, any additional questions or comments? Let me add that, thank you for your time this morning, Director Gutwall. As you can see, there is some concerns, as we had, foreseen this morning when you and I talked. And I think we flushed a lot of them out right here. So I guess we will certainly be looking forward to some changes if we're going to move forward. That said, I think we have 5 speakers signed up. And
Yes.
we'll go through the speakers, then we'll wrap up with any additional questions or comments, and then we will work these issues out. I mean, I think it's clear. I think we all heard all the members, just about all the members express their concerns. So it's clear where we need to go. My concern, as we were talking about earlier, was just taking a look at some of the senior and elderly housing and whether or not, there's like different strokes for different folks. And I know that when I think about like the transit-oriented development in Owings Mills, I notice how we gave credit for, or want to give credit for amenity open space, because in those developments, as well as some of the senior and elderly housing, the things that those citizens want are not so much the same as the type of items that you would want in like an affordable housing. Many of those seniors want things like pool houses, patios, clubhouses, I should say, things of that nature that would be more suitable for them. That said, we'll have more conversations as we move forward. I don't want to spend too much time on it now. Let's get to the, Chris, can we get to the call?
Yes, Chairman Jones. Our first speaker is Michelle Yendel. Ms. Yendel?
Yes. Hello,
may be-
thank you so much. It is a concern to me that the fees for affordable housing will be maintained at zero, and developers of affordable housing will be able to avoid providing any open or green space for the cost of simply requesting a waiver. In essence, no fee is tantamount to having no requirement at all. I think it's important to understand how nature and green space are integrated into our lives. Rich, poor, young, old, we fail to see the importance of our surroundings. Without recognizing their value to our being, we tend to treat them poorly. My grandson Roddick is now 11 and on the autistic spectrum. From the time he was a baby, Roddick found calm in the surroundings of the outside. Trees, grass, birds brought peace to him, and the normal holding and cuddling and singing to him did not. It is a only way for him and the family to connect. In an article from the Marcus Autism Center, it states well the benefits of nature to all children. Children who play outside regularly gain motor skills, including coordination, balance, agility. Play in natural environments encourages language and cooperative skills. Spending time in nature has been shown to reduce stress. If we extrapolate that into our daily lives of all ages, it's important to provide nature and peace for each soul. Wealth, status, race, gender should never concern our feelings for humanity of each person in our world. If we want to change that world, we need to nurture what's already good in our beings. What are we doing by determining that a family's income or where children live should be the barometer of how they will see themselves or the world? Affordable housing is something that we have been mandated to provide. Baltimore County did not offer it on our own. I call your attention to Maryland HB 82 and its companion SB 151. Unfortunately, these bills have not advanced out of committee. They propose a very simple fact. Everyone deserves the right to clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment. Everyone. Expectedly, they are opposed by the real power of Maryland, and specifically in Baltimore County, that is the developers and their companion law firms and lobbyists. This is the moment and a chance for Baltimore County Council to take action on what are frequently merely slogans in the campaigns for office. It is not enough to save one parcel at a time. Leadership should begin with this council, and Baltimore County should establish that every resident has human rights that begin with nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Michelle. We certainly appreciate you taking the time. Ms. Belcastro, next speaker.
Our next speaker is Eric Rockel.
Eric?
Good
Mr. Rockel.
afternoon, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, members of the council. I have a particular problem with one of the fees within the tier designation. It's tier 3 that I have the problem with. And before I delve into detail, let me just make a general remark about some of the introductory language in this resolution. It states in the introductory language that the local open space waiver fee is meant to as a reasonably proportionate offset for the cost to the county to acquire alternate recreational land. Now, let's say for the case of an example, a developer proposes to build 50 units of housing within that tier 3. That would equate to him being 50,000 square feet of local open space, or he could request the waiver. And under this tier 3 proposal, he would be required to pay $10,000 for that 50 units. Now, let's look at some of recent examples within the last year and a half of what the county's paid for local open space on county directed projects. You had recently a approval to purchase land on Delaney Valley Road. And that worked out to costing the county $89,796 per acre. A little bit before then, you had another purchase up in Perry Hall on Newgurst Road, and that worked out to $137,660 per acre. And finally, you had about a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago, a purchase at 8800 Greens Lane, which worked out to $64,600 per acre. Okay. Now, all of those are substantially higher on a per acre value than what this tier 3 waiver fee would suggest. Again, using my example, if the developer was building 50 units, that require him to buy 1.15 acres of open space. However, he'd only have to pay, if he got the waiver approved, $10,000. That is not even close to approximating the per acre cost of those 3 examples I gave you of county purchases. And I could supply 3 other private transactions in the open market where substantially more than $10,000 per acre was paid for land. So I would urge the council to strike that amount and do something more in the neighborhood of $25,000 per 25 units.
Mr. Rocco, if you could wrap up your comments.
All right, that summarizes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rocco, for your testimony. You certainly made your point very clear. Next speaker, Chris.
Our next speaker, Mr. Chair, would have been Chris Mudd, but he wanted me to let you know that he yielded his time. So we're going to move on to Beth Miller.
Ms. Miller?
Yes, I'm here.
You may begin.
Thank you. The Green Towson Alliance was represented on the open space work group by Marsha McLaughlin. She's unable to attend today, so she asked me to make this statement. Section 32-6-108 of the County Code calls for the open space fee structure to be based on the location and type of development unit proposed, and shall include separate fee rates per residential development unit. The planning department staff did considerable research on current county land assessment valuations in order to calculate the average cost per square foot of land in each of the 6 tiers. This per square foot could have been used for the fee schedule, or it could have been used to calculate the open space fee per dwelling unit based on the requirement of 1,000 square feet of open space per unit. Either approach would have been based on staff research and have allowed clear comparisons of the proposed fees for the 6 tiers. Instead, the administration chose a hybrid approach that uses a mix of 3 ways to calculate the open space fee. This makes it impossible to understand and compare the proposed fees for the 6 tiers. I will be sending you a copy of this testimony with a chart indicating how confusing it is to use different rates for the various tiers. The work group agreed that the need for open space improvements will differ by location throughout the county. Accordingly, the work group recommended that further analysis and work should be done to evaluate the adequate public facilities regulations on open space. This analysis should include an appropriate standard methodology for calculating open space fees based on location and type of development. Finally, affordable housing is needed in many parts of Baltimore County. This is an economic challenge. However, attempting to exempting or minimizing the need for open space by creating a fee in lieu of 0 for the first 50 units is not an appropriate cost-cutting strategy. This disincentivizes developers of affordable housing to provide open space in their developments since there is no penalty for failing to do so. Low and moderate income households generally have less access to open space than more affluent ones, and therefore need to have sufficient open space provided. In fact, the proposed Red Maple Place 56-unit project was granted a waiver of open space and will provide no on-site or off-site open space for its residents. A more reasonable method to promote affordable housing would be to require all new developments to include 10 or 15% of affordable units. This is being done in other central Maryland counties and should be considered as a better alternative than simply drastically reducing open space requirements and opportunities. We ask that the council amend the fee schedule to require affordable housing projects to pay a fee if it is not possible to provide open space.
So thank you, Ms. Miller, for your testimony, and based on the comments of the other members, I'm sure we're going to take care of that. Chris, final speaker.
One more speaker, and that is Barbara Hopkins. Ms. Hopkins?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I am the Executive Director of NeighborSpace, which was a member of the work group that looked at this fee schedule last fall. My comments are in 2 categories. One, those specific to the fees proposed in the resolution, and those specific to the statutory context of the resolution. With respect to the proposed fees, we did not and do not agree that 0 to 50 units of affordable housing should pay nothing. This is not because we're opposed to affordable housing, but rather because our mission is all about livability. Affordable housing creates more open space needs than single-family housing. Already, the deficit of open space associated with existing multifamily housing is huge in Baltimore County, a result that is borne out in maps that we prepared for each councilmanic district and sent to each council member by email shortly ago. Those who are listening can find this testimony and the maps on the LOS Laws and Policies subpage of our projects page on the NeighborSpace website. Giving affordable housing a pass would make a bad situation worse. With respect to the statutory context, and in particular, Mr. Rockwell's comments, it is good that we now have a fee schedule that speaks to the tiers in existing law. That has been lacking since 2016. This is a step forward, but that is the only step forward. This set of fees is no panacea, to be sure. They do not comply with the requirement in the underlying ordinance that the fee account for the cost of both acquiring and improving land for parks, to Mr. Rockwell's excellent point. That can't happen because the level of service is currently set at 1,000 square feet of open space per dwelling unit, a standard that has no rational basis that we have been able to identify, and that is certainly not reflective of the varying needs for open space across the county. The underlying law and its enforcement are problematic in numerous other ways, with the result that an ordinance and a section of the code called adequate public facilities yields outcomes that are both inadequate and private. Our research has shown that what results from this ordinance is largely one of 3 things. First, privately improved land that is off limits to the public when developers do provide open space, a fee that is wholly inadequate to both purchase and improve land, as Mr. Rocco pointed out, or improvements to existing off-site facilities, all of which make no real dent in the challenge faced by the 65% of residences inside the Erdl that lack access to adequate open space within a 5-minute walk of home. In closing, we are pleased to be part of the work group created by the county executive and led by Planning Director Steve Lafferty to take a look at the ordinance and hopeful that amendments addressing the foregoing challenges can be brought forward for the council's consideration next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hopkins. That concludes our speakers.
Mr. Chairman.
That said, yes, Councilman Marks?
Just a question and a statement. Question to Mr. Gutwald. When was this largely wrapped up? Around January, February?
Actually, I think it wrapped up November, December.
Okay, thank you. Just a statement. Here we are 4 days before this bill is getting voted on. And it's interesting to hear that we're only hearing the opposition right now. A heck of a lot more emails and opposition to 4 acres of land in Perry Hall. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Marks. Any additional questions or comments from the members? Obviously, I want to thank everybody for their testimony. It's been a very vigorous discussion, and obviously, Mr. Gutwald, we're not there yet. Again, you and I had this conversation this morning, and I'll be reaching out to you after the work session today in terms of how we move forward. And everybody gets to know that you'll be involved in terms of moving forward, coming up with the reasonable outcome, and recognizing that there's also a committee looking at this as well. So, any additional questions or comments before we move on? We have a long way to go. Hearing none, thank you very much, Mr. Gutwald. Now we move on to page 54, Mr. Leonard Howard, Director of Economic Development and Economic and Workforce Development.
Good afternoon, good evening, Mr.
21.
Okay, good afternoon, good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. The first one, bring to our attention, the administration requests a resolution that authorizes the issuance of Baltimore County revenue bonds in the amount not to exceed $18.65 million on behalf of the McDonough School in Owings Mills. The bonds will be used to refinance existing Maryland Industrial Development Financing Authority Economic Development revenue bonds and to finance issuance costs related to that transaction. The current interest rates on the outstanding bonds is 4.5%, and the estimated interest rate for the refinancing is 3% or lower. The county does not incur any liability by approving this resolution, nor does it pledge its full faith and credit. The McDonough School will repay the principal and interest on the bonds.
Thank you, Mr. Howie. I guess like to thank you and all the members of your staff for assisting in this. And McDonough School is a very important part in my community. You do an excellent job, and we always want to be supportive to them as much as we can. And I think we've been doing so. So thank you again for putting this. Are there any speakers, Ms. Pierce?
No speakers on this item, Chairman.
Okay.
There is a question though, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilman Cat.
Yeah, didn't we just give money a couple years or the same kind of loan to McDonough a few years ago for a middle school?
Number one, let me just say we've done a similar thing that we're doing today for McDonough School in the past.
Right.
And that is true. And again, the important thing from Director Howie is this has nothing to do with the faith and credit of Baltimore County. And we're sort of like a pass through here.
Right.
And I don't want to get into all the technical details, but you know, they have a right to sort of use this as much as they like. And as long as we agree with it.
I just asked it for information, and my question is, are these refinancing the loans that they have for the middle school, or is this, are these different loans?
That I'm not 100% sure. Director
Yeah.
Howie, do you know?
No, I'm not sure as well. I have to, I'll get that answer to you though.
I could respond to that.
Yes, oh, sure.
This is Sherry Vocal. I'm the CFO at McDonough School.
Well,
This refinancing is refinancing bonds that we issued in 2011. And those bonds financed our student center and our science and math building for the upper school. We just finished actually completing the middle school construction, and the middle school moved in to the new building at the end of April. And we're very happy that the county supported us on that project. It enabled us to actually bring all students on campus at the end of April, even during the pandemic. So that provided our students and faculty and staff a great benefit for even during the pandemic.
Okay, thank you so very, very much for being here. And I thought you were. That's why I was
Yes.
asking you to speak.
You're welcome.
I thought I was on my own there for a minute. I'm glad you showed up just in time. Any additional questions or comments from the
Yeah,
members?
Mr. Chair, quick question, and this is actually for Mr. Blades. So when we were preparing the budget just a few months ago, one of the questions I had during our budget preparation and in terms of our debt capacity is to do exactly what the McDonough School is doing, is to refinance our old debt because rates are so low right now. And just wondering if it's advantageous to the McDonough School in the long term, is doing a refinancing of debt that was issued 10 years ago advantageous to Baltimore County?
Councilman, we pursue every opportunity to refinance that we can when it's advantageous to the county. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as going out and refinancing your house. There are other regulations, IRS regulations that apply to us. So we cannot refinance everything. So we follow the rules. We talk to our bond counsel, and everything that we can refi, we do.
Okay, I just wanted to revisit that for the moment while it was up for discussion this evening.
Okay, any additional questions or comments? All right, again, we're happy to do it, Ms. Vocal, and we're happy that you were here to answer the questions that people had, other members had. And we wish you well and keep up the good work. You're very
Thank you so
important part
much.
of that community, and we appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, and thanks for the members of the council.
Sure, thank you. Moving right along to page 58, Director Howie, you're up again. Arts and Science grants.
Okay, the administration is requesting approval of grants in support of its FY22 Arts and Sciences Grants Program. In consultation with the Commission of Arts and Sciences, these grants support organizations and institutions that provide arts and cultural opportunities for the benefit of Baltimore County residents and visitors. This fiscal year, these grants total $3.2 million, of which about $2.7 million are operating grants and the remainder are project grants. These grants are all the more critical as our county and regional cultural partners were hit incredibly hard by the pandemic. Many made sizable investments to shift offerings from live to virtual, and last year's grants have been instrumental in maintaining continuity of operations and shifting service delivery. We know that there are often questions regarding the support of regional organizations that are located outside of the county. One of the factors that we looked at were the number of employees from Baltimore counties who work in these organizations. We found that over 500 Baltimore County residents were supported by arts and culture organizations with either full or part-time employment. Finally, grantees reported serving a combined total of almost 700,000 county residents, which accounts for close to 20% of the total served at these institutions during the past year.
Thank you very much, Director Howie. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll go back to Director Gutwall. Understand you have 7 contracts on page, I'm gonna say 29, is it? Landscaping contracts? We can't hear you, Director Gutwall.
You there, Bet? How about that?
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, Council Chairman, members of the council. These contracts are for landscaping and lighting plans in Baltimore County. Administration is requesting approval of 3 contracts to provide on-call landscape and lighting plan reviews and approvals in accordance with the Baltimore County Landscape Manual. The 3 contracts that will commence on council approval continues for 1 year and will renew automatically for 4 additional 1-year periods with the option to extend the initial term or any renewal term an additional 120 days. The contracts do not specify the maximum compensation for the initial year. However, the compensation for the 3 contracts combined is limited to the amount appropriate for these services. This estimated compensation for the contracts combines a total of $125,000 for fiscal year 22 and a total of $656,250 for the entire 5-year and 4-month term. As you may or may not be aware, we only have 1 landscape architect employed by Baltimore County. He is woefully behind and overworked, if you will, reviewing a lot of landscape and lighting plans, amendments to those, dealing with bonds associated with his landscaping plans. Jim Herman does a yeoman's job of trying to keep up with it, but this was a way to provide him assistance in the bottleneck of reviewing a lot of these plans that people are waiting for his review and approval. So my understanding, because this was a contract that was released before RFP that was released before I became director here, but this did go through a review process, and these were the 3 firms that were qualified to provide those services for landscape architecture and lighting plans.
Again, Mr. Gutwell, thank you so much. Sorry to keep you there for a second. And I think it's very important because it goes back to quality of life, right? Lighting and landscaping. Any questions or comments from the members? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Gutwell. We'll move on to page 58. Director Howie, did we do the arts and science grants? Okay. If we did that already, let's go on to the appointments to the Director of Housing and Community Development, Mr. Terry Hick.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. You want to, I think you will get smooth sailing here. If you want to say a few words before we go ahead and appoint you, because I think everybody, based on the history of your presentations and the comments, have been very pleased with your performance and your responsiveness to the members and your vision for the future. Take it away.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair, but I will say a few words. Good evening, members of the council. Good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing me to come speak to my nomination to lead the new Department of Housing and Community Development. I wanted to start with the most obvious thanks, and thanks to the council for approving the legislation that created the department. I think it's a critical piece, and I very much look forward to being a part of that. I want to thank the county executive for his vision for DHCD and his support for safe and accessible housing for all county residents, including renters, homeowners, and those currently experiencing homelessness or housing instability. And I want to express my appreciation to the county executive and Madam CAO for their confidence in my ability to lead this new department pending council approval. I consider it a great honor to be considered. I've talked to many of you, all of you, prior to this hearing. I'll dispense with formal remarks just to say that this really is a culmination of a great deal of work. I have spent time in government. I've worked on human services issues. I've worked heavily in homelessness and housing issues throughout my career. I've had the honor of leading nonprofit organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Greater Chesapeake, work with children. I've been able to teach at UMBC, University of Maryland School of Law, and UB, on the type of issues I learned through practicing in the first place. We have an incredibly talented group of people that make up what will very soon be DHCD. We have an incredibly collaborative group of leaders all the way up through, including the county executive and the members of this council. And there's just a tremendous amount of work to be done. And I'm very much looking forward to being a part of that. So, Mr. Chair, it's your advice. I will stop there and see if there are questions.
Well, I don't know what kind of questions we have, but I suspect we'll have some accolades. Councilman Quirk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be really brief. Terry Hickey, I think you're the right guy at the right time. The issues you're dealing with are super complex and unfortunately, not always easy, especially dealing with our homeless population. Sometimes, unfortunately, some of our homeless don't want help, and it puts us in a very difficult situation. And I just wish there were easier answers out there to really get the people the help that they need when sometimes they don't even realize it. And so I know it's case by case, and it's really tough work you're doing. Fortunately, I think the department you'll be overseeing has tons and tons of upside. I'll put an optimistic spin on that, and look forward to working together closely, especially on some of the issues that really are visible and issues that are really important to the community, which there's a number of them. So we have a lot to tackle, but I think you're the guy to do it, and look forward to working together. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilman Quirk. Any additional questions or comment? Let me
Yes.
just, I heard, who was next? Who's that? Go ahead, Councilman Quirk.
Briefly, I feel like this is deja vu because Mr. Hickey, I feel like you've been doing this job and you've been doing it well since you came to Baltimore County. So I agree with Councilman Quirk. You're absolutely, without a doubt, the right person for the job. And like I said, you've been doing it. I feel like we've already appointed you in the past, and smooth sailing ahead, and continue the great work that you've already done for Baltimore County.
Thank you, Councilman.
Are there any additional questions or comments? Okay, let me just say that I'll start by saying, Director Hickey, we certainly appreciate all your work, everything you've done. I look forward to you leading this new department. I think it's so important that we look at this as a holistic approach. When we think about, you can't think about homelessness without thinking about affordable housing and other housing choices in Baltimore County. They're all tied together. People just don't wake up and become homeless. So there's a lot of reasons why they end up there, but I want to say that affordable housing and housing choices are very important. And sometimes the lack of those things contribute to homelessness. So on that note, that's my comments. That's my 2 cents. Anything else from any of the members before we move forward? Thank you, Director Hickey. We look forward to talk to you soon, again, as we vote on you Monday night. Next,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome. Next, we'll move on to item number 8, qualified individual supervisor of assessments. Do we have any of those individuals here, Chris?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I did not request Chris have these folks come, but we certainly can if on July 6th, if the council wishes. The approval that you are being requested to make is pursuant to state law. The supervisor of assessments for the local SSTAT, Kevin Walters, I believe Mr. Walters was promoted, so there is currently a vacancy in that position, and the state law requires that the county executive, with the approval of the county council, put together a list of qualified persons to then forward to the director of SDAT, who then makes the final selection of the new supervisor. It's my understanding that the county posted the job offering on the county's website and collected applications. I believe there were 9 applications that were received, and ultimately the 4 were determined to meet the qualifications of the position. And I think after interviews, the 4 that were deemed qualified have been forwarded on to the council for their approval to then be moved on to the director of SDAT. The candidates are Ms. Kathleen Phillips, Mr. Braxton McNeil, Mr. Alan Rudo, and Mr. Michael Thompson. You all were forwarded their resumes. So I think if there are any questions, we can certainly have them come on Tuesday.
Well, I refer to the members. I personally don't think I need to see them. I trust their resumes are adequate, and I trust the selection process that got them this far.
Right, and Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, these are the qualified candidates. This is not a recommendation. It is the head of SDAT that makes the final decision.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm okay if they not, if there are, does any of the members want them to show up? Hearing none, I guess they don't have to come. Thank you very much, Mr. Boswick and Director Blades. And now we will move on. You're welcome. We'll move on to page 17. Move on to page 17. Bernard Brooks, Deputy Director of the Department of Corrections.
Good evening, Chairman Jones and members of the council. I regret that I'm unable to see you by video. We're having technical difficulties, but Chris was able to be in, but you can hear my voice.
Yes.
The administration is requesting an amendment to a contract with Airmark Correctional Services to continue to provide food services for the detention center inmates and the Department of Corrections staff. The department advised that the proposed amendment is necessary to avoid interruption of services while the county prepares a solicitation for bid and finalizes a new contract. The proposed amendment retroactively extends the contract for 1 additional year from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th of 2022. Compensation may not exceed the amount appropriated for these services. Estimated compensation totals $1,533.79 for an additional 1-year extension period and $13,812,131 for the entire 8-year and 7-month term, including the renewal and extension periods. The contract commenced November 4th of 2013 and expired June 30th, 2021. So that's where we are, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director Brooks. Are there any questions or comments from the members? Hearing none, thank you very much, sir. Say hello. Wait a minute.
Sorry.
Right here, Councilman Patoka.
Thank you. Just a question. It's similar to the question I had related to the Towson Circulator on local, on the bidding process and having different sectors of the economy having to pivot. So Aramark, as I understand, they're a huge corporation. And I was wondering if it's possible moving forward, so many catering businesses, and particularly in Baltimore County, have had to pivot and figure out a new way to make a living. Is it possible during the course of the future of this bid process to look at those local catering industries right here in Baltimore County and allow them to be able to have a piece of the contract or some relationship with Aramark I think Aramark is an international company. Because I know I just wrote them a big check to provide food services for my son in another country. And so I think I think that we should look at the catering industries that have been devastated right here in Baltimore County and see if they have the facilities to help feed people that are being housed in our correctional facilities.
Well, Councilman, I can understand your comment, but I would just say that whether it's a local catering company or a large organization such as Aramark, we have to keep in mind that providing services for 1,000 inmates plus at least 400 to 450 staff 3 times a day, over 3,000 meals, is quite an undertaking. That's number one. Number two, we also have to look at not only providing what's known as a general diet, but we have a lot of therapeutic diets. These organizations, if they bid, would have to have, for example, a registered dietitian who would be able to look at the nutritional needs, because all of these meals have to be balanced nutritionally, number one. And number two, we have a lot of therapeutic diets, whether it's for those who are suffering from diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, renal disease, etc. So not only do they provide the general diet, they have to provide the therapeutic diets as well. So if they're going to take on a challenge this big, they would have to be able to rise to the occasion. So I'm just saying, if they're able to bid on it and they can bring all of that to the table and work with the inmate staff, because the inmates do provide the manpower, they would be welcome to bid.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Councilmember
Yes,
Jones,
Ms.
let me
Rogers.
recognize. Councilmember Patoka, as a part of our continued expansion of our work in terms of small, minority and women-owned businesses, one of the things is that we're looking at all of our contracts for the opportunity for subcontracting as well as broadly promoting it. Now, I definitely understand the complications of the meal offering for the professional corrections, but in our effort to make sure that we have competitive, open and competitive contracting, we are looking to see where there is potential for partnering, whether it be subcontract, and looking at goals set forth on the contract. That is loud and clear to us when the disparity study was released, that we have to do some work in looking at the partnerships and other ways to spread that out. So that is a part of our agenda, especially when it comes to small minority and women businesses.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. I know that during the pandemic, all of us saw in each of our respective districts that catering companies and food distribution companies did things that they had never done before, but they all rose to the occasion during this unprecedented period. And if we could continue that momentum, even though it was continued in an awful environment, to create opportunities for local businesses, I think then we'd be going in the right direction.
And we totally agree. Councilmember Patoka, you will, this summer we are having a doing business with Baltimore County briefing on doing business for small minority and women-owned businesses in general, and what's new and different in how we're doing that. That's going to be in July, actually, the end of July.
Great. It'd be interesting to see if that, if a partnership between DoID and the other agencies like corrections could kind of weave into that lane of creating those opportunities.
Definitely on our radar, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any more questions or comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Brooks, for your
Thank you.
testimony. We'll move right on to Chief Run. Industrial Organizational Solutions.
Yes,
Chief
yes,
Rock.
sir. Good evening, Councilman Jones and the rest of the council members. I'm Ray Norris. I'm sitting in for Chief Runt. He was unable to be in the meeting today. The administration is requesting approval for a contract with Industry Solution, IOS Solutions, to provide independent third-party testing services to evaluate and rate fire department candidates. The contract commences upon council approval, continues to November 20th, 2021, and will renew automatically for additional one-year period with the option to extend the initial term of renewal term for additional 120 days. The contract does not specify a maximum compensation for the initial approximate 4.5-month term. Compensation may not exceed $207,920 for the entire approximate 1 year and 8.5-month term, including the renewal of extended periods. The department advised that the county will contract with the independent third-party contractor to conduct fire and EMS entry-level and promotional testing. The contractor will create testing packets and conduct written examinations to evaluate and rate applicants and promotional candidates. The department advises that all rankings assessed by the contractor will be forwarded to the fire department personnel during the oral interviews and the hiring process. Contract commences upon council approval, continues through November 2021, and will renew automatically for one additional one-year period with the option to extend the initial term of renewal term for an additional 120 days of the same terms and conditions, unless the county provides notice of non-renewal. The contract does not specify the maximum compensation of the initial approximate 4.5-month term. Compensation may not exceed $207,920 for the entire approximate 1 year and 8.5-month term, including renewal and extension periods. The county may terminate the agreement by providing 30 days prior written notice. The department advised that the compensation amount of $207,920 is based on the projected pool of 4,000 candidates for both fire and EMS applicant testing yearly, and the validation of the department's physical ability testing, as well as the interview process. County awarded the contract as a piggyback for an extended competitive bid by Montgomery County in November of 2017.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Any questions or comments? Thank you, sir. Tell Chief Rung hello, and we miss her, and we look forward to seeing her again.
Yes, ma'am.
Moving right on to page 21, Director Blades.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Bank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, members of council. The administration is requesting your approval of a contract amendment with PNC Bank National Association to continue providing corporate purchasing card services, also known as P-cards. The proposed amendment extends our contract for 5 additional years, retroactive to July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2026. P-cards allow designated county employees to purchase goods and services within established purchase spending limits. The county has 870 active P-card accounts and 226 active Ghost accounts. Ghost accounts are used by multiple employees when buying supplies with the county's office supply contract. The county does rebates through the P-card program. The purchasing division estimates the FY22 rebate will be approximately $162,000, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from the members? Thank you, Director Blades.
Thank you.
We will move on to, let me see, where are we going to go now? Where are we going to go now? How about we go to page, one second, page 37. Page 37, Amy Grassi, real estate compliance.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council. The administration is requesting approval of a contract to acquire roughly an acre of land on North Point Boulevard for $102,500 from Prime Storage North Point Boulevard, Baltimore Residential LLC. This will be a passive open space acquisition to preserve a monument to 1812. This was the site of a hospital where soldiers were cared for. And there's a monument there. The whole property is about just short of 3 acres actually, and is in the process of development review. The county approached the developer to acquire this portion of the property and preserve the monument as a passive space for historic purposes.
Very good. Thank you very much, Chief Grassi. Are there any questions, comments from the members?
Yeah, hold on one second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councilman.
Good afternoon, Ms. Grassi. Thank you for your work on this. I do have a couple questions, I guess, is what was the genesis of the county pursuing this partial acre of property?
I believe the administration heard from the community about the concerns for the monument and its surrounding area.
Okay.
Then I was asked to approach the owner for county acquisition.
Okay. Now, the monument still is obviously there. If you
Yes, sir.
visited the property, you probably saw it. It looks like it's being fairly maintained. And there are graves that I believe are marked that are part of the United Methodist or the meeting house that used to be there, where both British and English soldiers that were wounded at North Point were cared for, and of course some were deceased there. Now, you've probably heard, and the county executive through the process of this probably heard of the potential controversy that there being additional unmarked and undocumented graves on the site. Are you aware of that possibility? Okay.
I have heard of potential unmarked graves beyond the boundaries of the county acquisition.
Okay. That's something that our office has been looking into, because we're getting a little bit of conflicting accounts. Apparently there has been some ground penetrating radar studies of the property that didn't necessarily find anything, but then there was also apparently a body from an unmarked, undocumented grave that was taken from the site and is now at the Smithsonian. I've asked our appointee to the Landmarks Commission. It's one of the things that we were considering was legislation through the Landmark Commission to section off a part of where these unmarked, undocumented graves may be. But are you saying that if there are undocumented and unmarked graves, that the parcel that the county would be purchasing under this contract would not necessarily take into account the possibility that those graves are there?
I don't know where they're supposed to be, so I can't speak authoritatively.
Okay. I think there may be some acrimony among some of the historic activists in the community and the property owner, and I know that there is some dispute as to whether these graves exist and whether they're English or British. I'm not sure that it matters. These are folks that obviously died in the War of 1812, and this would have been in 1814 when the British invaded Baltimore and Fort McHenry and ended up on the shores of North Point. So we're going to apparently, and Doug Anderson in my office has been doing some digging on this, and we're going to see some documentation that our appointee to the Landmarks Commission has come up with through the years, who's been quite a historian on this. Because we're sort of on the fence of what to support here. Now, you always want to support open space, and you want to support. I would think that we would all want to support a monument to what might be a bit of a forgotten war, but a war that may have saved the United States of America, because the British had already burned D.C. and were on their way to the third largest city in the country at the time to destroy Baltimore and take over our country. And so it's sort of precious land. And I just, given the fact that we don't have accurate information as to where those, if they exist, and then as to where they may be, I'm just wondering if now is the appropriate time to move forward with the POS contract until we can get a little bit more historic documentation, perhaps from even the Smithsonian itself, which is something we
If
were
I might,
considering.
if I might offer a point in that regard, Councilman.
Sure.
Assuming that additional investigation is ongoing in that regard, if in fact it does turn up something, then it's my understanding that those new facts would result in the preservation of the graves, regardless of whether we proceeded with this acquisition at this point or not.
Okay, so it have more to do with the development review process.
Precisely. And permitting,
development
exactly.
approval process.
Yeah, I mean, if those things are there and can be found, then, you know, that would be impacting the other parcel and not necessarily this. But, you know, and if they are there, they would, you know, obviously, there are laws against disturbing graves. If they can be found, they can't be touched. To this point, they haven't been touched, and I believe that all of that was taken into account in kind of designing the boundaries of this taking.
Yeah, and there are some, as I said, I believe there are some marked graves there.
Right.
that have-
Yes.
And then they've been walled off, even though I don't believe the meeting house is still there. Now, there's a church right next door, but
Right.
that's not the original meeting house. If I'm not mistaken, my constituents would probably not be too happy that I can't recall, but I don't believe that the original meeting house is still there. So it's just a concern that, you know, that I don't want to move too quickly. Now, I'm also not aware of any active study that anyone's conducting. So we're just trying to gather our facts, as we're told by some folks who are history buffs in the area that no, there are no undocumented graves there. And then other people are saying, yes, there absolutely are, because there's been some archaeological evidence found, such as a bullet, I don't know if you would call it a bullet back then, that had teeth marks on it, which means someone was being operated on and they were biting the bullet as they were going through.
Without anesthesia, yeah.
God knows what, yeah. So, so we're going to keep looking into it. I just want to make sure that we're not moving prematurely on this acquisition.
Well, again, it's kind of, you know, it's kind of two separate things at this point. We've you know, we've drafted the lines of our intended acquisition, and if these studies come through, because as you said, there's kind of conflicting evidence and conflicting stories, and I think this has been going on for some time.
Yes.
And you know, we just don't have any evidence that we've missed any of the graves. But like I said, if further studies can find them, and the right agency or, the right organizations are involved in that pursuit, there are laws against disturbing graves, and they will not be
Sure.
disturbed if they can be found. And if they can't be found, then it's kind of, unfortunately, 200 years ago.
Yeah.
None of us was there to know where these graves are.
Right. And it's yeah, I mean, not to be too morbid, but they weren't buried in copper caskets.
Right. Yeah, no, right.
And probably not even in pine.
Correct.
So it's just a concern. We'll keep moving.
It's noted, and the Department of Rec and Parks is aware, and I do believe that at the very least, this issue of the body that needs internment that may be with the Smithsonian. I know we've been trying to track that down. Again, you can't just call 1-800-SMITHSONIAN and find a 200-year-old body that's being studied. And I don't intend to be morbid or crass either. But we've been given kind of this sprinkling of vague evidence that we are trying to run down.
Sure. Well, and I don't think we're being morbid by paying honor to those who have fought and died for our country. So
that is our intention, sir. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for your work on it, and like I said, we'll continue our research, and then we'll correspond with you and our Landmarks Commission folks, and see where we head with that. But and I don't want to belabor it, but so, I mean, obviously the monument stays where it is. That's protected in that 0.96 acres. And then the graves that we do know about, they're protected in this 0.96 acres as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question, Jamie.
You're welcome. Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions or comments? Thank you very much. I guess goes to show our little part of this country is very rich in history. And we certainly appreciate you bringing up all those items here today. Now we will move on to page 40, Ms. Deb Schindel, property manager.
Good evening, everyone, and councilman members of the council. The administration is requesting approval of a contract with E.J. Harrington Son Incorporated to provide preventive maintenance and repair to the county computer-related HVAC equipment and the systems at various county sites. This contract was competitive. It is a one-year contract and will renew automatically for 4 additional one-year period. Compensation may not exceed the $1,726,484 for the entire 5-year and 4 months term of this contract. This contract is to furnish all latest equipment, material, and supervision with all of the necessary repairs, and provide quarterly inspections and preventions to all HVAC systems located at our 42 OIP equipment locations throughout the county.
Thank you. Ms.
I can
That
take
it? I'm sorry. I couldn't hear you.
I can take any questions if you would like me.
Thank you, Ms. Schindel. Are there any questions or comments from the members? Hearing none, thank you very much, Ms. Schindel. Why don't we move on to James Benjamin, Industrial Organizational Solutions. Page 42.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the council. The administration is requesting approval of a contract with Industrial Organizational Solutions to develop and validate a new written examination for police officer and cadet applicants. The contract commences upon council approval, continues for 1 year, and will renew automatically for 1 additional 1-year period with the option to extend the initial term or the renewal term for an additional 90 days. The contract does not specify a maximum compensation for the initial 1-year term. Compensation may not exceed $200,000 for the entire 2-year and 3-month term, including renewal and extension periods. And I would note that this is pursuant to the terms of a settlement agreement entered into between the county and the U.S. Department of Justice. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Benjamin. Are there any questions or comments from the member? Okay. Thank you very much. Just give me 1 second here. We're going to move on to next item on page 48, Mr. Benjamin.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, members of the council.
Amendment to a contract.
Yes, sir. The administration is requesting an amendment to a contract with Class Action Administration, LLC, a DBA, a JND Legal Administration, to continue to provide claims administration services, which are required as part of the settlement reached between the county and the U.S. Department of Justice concerning the police department's prior hiring practices. The proposed amendment increases the maximum compensation by $128,000 from $112,000 to $240,000 for the entire approximate 2-year and 5-month term, including the renewal and extension periods. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the member? Thank you very much, Mr. Benjamin.
Thank you.
Now we move on to page 1, Mr. Crandall. Gathering permit. Councilman Crandall?
I'm here. Just had to move around the house for a second.
No problem. We'll wait for you.
I appreciate that. You all remember the bill that we voted on some time ago regarding gathering permits. The genesis of the bill was to regulate these carnivals that come in without security plans and cause all kinds of problems. The worst probably in my district at East Point Mall. And as we went through that legislation, we made several amendments, grandfathering in events that were longstanding in our communities that already knew the process, that were already working with the appropriate authorities who knew how to do the events. There was another amendment we passed as well, but it became troublesome to me when I was told by constituents that they just wanted a simple gathering permit for something as simple as a bull roast at a VFW. And the county was, they were told by the county that the county council passed a law that it gave PAI 60 days to process a simple gathering permit. So I thought that that was unfair to organizations and halls that we all have in our district, whether they be American Legions, VFWs, Masonic halls, professional catering halls. We started working with the administration on potential amendments. We've gotten to an amendment that we shared with the one before you, that we shared with the administration. Have to give credit to the administration. We've been working with Chuck Connor, his team, and with Meg Ferguson at the police department's council to come to some sort of better clarity and fairness on how this rule would affect certain classes of events. To me, a birthday party held at a Moose Lodge is a completely different event than an outdoor carnival with mechanized rides and thousands of people showing up. So the amendment before you that we came up with was that it would reduce the time for a gathering if a gathering permit is necessary, it would reduce the time for an event to receive a gathering permit to a 14-day period, which it was used to, instead of a 60-day period, unless the event is such that the director feels that it involves a lot more consternation and investigation by the director of PAI, who would still have the authority to do that if an event is just so different and out of scope from what they're usually seeing. Now, that amendment, and we've been doing this in partnership with the administration, that amendment was sent over, I believe, Mr. Bostwick, it was sent over late yesterday. We did get a response. However, I have not read the response from the administration. I don't know if the administration wants to speak up on the response. I don't feel that if we don't pass something on Monday that the world will end. I'm just looking for fairness for our smaller organizations that simply should not fall under the same requirements and regulations that an outdoor carnival, that is a traveling carnival, that until we pass the law, has no responsibility to involve the police department or PAI or anything. They can just lease the property from a shopping center parking lot and go ahead and conduct their parade. And that the law that we passed protects against that. But it also calls into question what is a gathering permit, when is a gathering permit needed, and how long does it take to get one? And one of the things we talked about is you can get a liquor permit and pay for your liquor permit in a one-day turnaround. You can get a gaming permit and pay for it in a 14-day turnaround, but you may not be able to get that gathering permit that you would need in order for you to have gaming and to have alcohol at your event. You may not get that for 60 days if you get it at all, even though you put out the money and time to put the permits out. So we've been going through this process for a while. It's been a little tedious, I think, for some, but I'd just like to see us get it right. And one of the recommendations that I made is that we asked Mr. Gutwald and his department to simplify the language on the county website of when you need a permit, how long you have before your event to put a permit in, what's required of you when you have a particular permit. Now, there are always hybrid events. We know that. There are events that are a little bit different that might fall out of scope. And that's something for the director of PAI to determine. But I just would really like to see us make it a simpler process, and a process where a VFW gets a call and says, "Hey, can I rent your place on Saturday night?" And they say, "Can't do it. I need 60 days notice." And a lot of these places simply don't, and I think a lot of you know the people that operate these places, or certainly the organizations, they just don't operate that way. They operate sometimes on a 2 to 3 week sort of rental schedule. So that's the basis of the amendment, long worded basis for such a small amendment, but I'm just looking for fairness, and I'm hoping that you all too are too. And again, Mr. Bostwick and Mr. Chairman, if the administration would like to weigh in, because have not yet read their response to the amendment that we have proposed. And the proposed amendment says you have 100, if you're having an indoor event at a facility where you already have use by right to use that facility for that purpose, you don't need a gathering permit for use of a building of 100% of the fire marshal code's capacity. So
Thank you.
that's where we are.
Thank you, Councilman Crandall, and appreciate your hard work on this issue. Again, we know how long it's been going on. We recognize what the administration wanted to accomplish to fix some of the issues that have cropped up, but you've certainly been a champion sticking up as well as the other members for our local organizations who have these type functions every day or every other day, and we don't want to hinder them. Any comments from the administration? Madam Teo, Ms. Rogers, anyone? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Thank you very much, Councilman Crandall. And we'll move on to Bill 58.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your hard work. Bill 5821, page 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Plant unit developments, Councilman Marks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill corrects a cross-reference issue. Let me go back about 10 years. 10 years ago, the County Council made some significant reforms to the plan unit development process. The council at the time required that there be a community input meeting before an applicant formally submitted an application. And over the years, we have made other substantial reforms to this process in order to increase input and transparency. The legislation before you is the culmination of discussions that occurred between the planning department and the county council, and it attempts to correct a cross-reference issue. In other words, where the code says one thing, but it is not reflected in the zoning regulations. What I would like to do, Mr. Chairman, is turn this over to Mr. Bostwick, who drafted the legislation and is very familiar with the dilemma that prompted this bill. Can I do that, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely. Mr. Bostwick, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Marks accurately described, the bill really goes back about 10 years because there are two aspects to the PUD law. There is section 430 of the zoning regulations, which basically govern the land use aspects of planned unit developments, the uses, the density, the location, and the dwelling type. Then the county code sets forth, I guess, what could be characterized as the meat of the planned unit development process. 32-4-240, 241 through 245 set forth the application process, the requirements of a planned unit development, the hearing officer review of a planned unit development, and everything in between. And when as Mr. Marks indicated, when the council considered amendments to the PUD process back in 2011 to frankly make it more transparent, to give the community, prior to 2011, there was no requirement for a community input meeting before the resolution was introduced and passed. And the council in 2011 passed that law. In fact, Mrs. Bevins, Mr. Marks, and Mr. Quirk were on that council that spearheaded that effort. And what happened, though, when that was done was prior to Bill 3611, Section 32-4-242C was the aspect of the PUD law that dealt with council action, where the council, if they found that a development achieved a significantly or substantially higher quality than conventional, and that it could be eligible as a PUD for county review by adoption of the resolution, including the community benefit and other aspects. There was also an aspect that indicated that stated clearly in C2 that the council could amend or modify the densities or uses in the proposed PUD development, and that these amendments or modifications would be in the resolution adopted. Well, they became D1 and D2 after Bill 3611. However, in section 430 of the zoning regulations, 430.3 in particular, they did not get cross-referenced or, put into that bill to change them from the references to from C to what was created D. And I know that could be a little confusing, but that's really the essence of this. And this was pointed out by planning last year. And the question was what we could do about that at that time. And I think the decision was not to address it in the middle of a pandemic when people were concerned about other things. So as we got into 2021 and had discussions with several members, including Mr. Marks, the time was right to address this housekeeping issue. And so that is what really brings us to Bill 5821. Those are the substantive things that are in it. There is one thing, though, that I put in the bill when I was looking at the aspects of the council's ability and authority to make changes to the uses and densities, and that was in 32.4.245 C. No, I'm sorry, 245. Yes, C and C5 in particular, and as with the other provisions where the density and use provisions in section 430, the calculations are ultimately subject to modification or amendment by the council person who's reviewing the PUD. I also inserted that language in 32.4.245 C5, which states that one of the bases of approval of the PUD is a finding by the ALJ that the PUD development is in conformance with the goals, objectives, and recommendations of one or more of the following, either the master plan, area plans, or the Department of Planning. And it wasn't until that was, brought up by several people to Mr. Marks, and he and I discussed that, and he indicated that no, I don't want to change that. I do not wish to alter the basis of the ALJ's approval. I just wanted to reiterate the issues that were in section 430 and that have always been the prerogative of the council to amend or modify. So Mr. Marks asked me to, or requested that I amend out that reference so that 32.4.245 C5 will remain exactly as it is and will not be changed. And I think that gets us to where we are now. Mr. Marks, let me know if I've missed anything.
No, I thank you for that very comprehensive explanation. So this is really an issue that came about because of deliberations between the executive and legislative branches. This is an issue that was raised, I believe even before the pandemic, that we delayed doing anything about. And just to make clear, Mr. Bostwick, we will be preparing an amendment that basically does not change in any way the plan unit development process, that does not dilute community input in any way, and that also enshrines the ability of the administrative law judge to make the decision, correct?
That is exactly right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Marks, for your leadership, and Mr. Bostwick for your hard work. Any additional questions or comments from the members?
I might want to make a quick comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Marks, for bringing this to our attention, and I was happy to co-sponsor it. I think anytime that the public sees that some type of change is taking place in any kind of plan unit development, they get worried that something's going on. I heard from a few community folks that were all worried about this bill, and I told them there was nothing to worry about, that it was mostly clerical and just crossing our T's and dotting our I's. So thank you, and thank you, Councilman Jones, as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bevins. Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is, I think Mr. Bostwick said it best when he said this is basically a housekeeping issue where we had an unintended consequence in terms of a change that was made and it was pointed out, and now we're just fixing it. So any additional questions or comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Boswick, Councilman Marks, and Councilwoman Bevins. Now we will move on to Bill.
We do have speakers, sir.
We have a speaker?
We have several.
We have 4 speakers.
4 speakers. All right. Let's hear from the first speaker. Thank you.
Our first speaker is Eric Rockel. Mr. Rockel.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the council. I'm not here opposing this bill, but I would urge the county council going forward to convene a study group to examine the PUD legislation in general and ways that it can be enhanced. Specifically, from my vantage point, I think the PUD legislation could be improved if certain guardrails, quote unquote, were placed on the PUD process. And let me cite just a couple of examples of these, quote, guardrails I'm referring to. Is it appropriate to have a minimum parcel size for any and all PUDs? Is it appropriate to specify a maximum number of residential units irregardless of the zoning type? I think we should examine the community benefit types that currently exist and maybe modernize that somewhat. Fourthly, setback standards from existing buildings should be a consideration, as well as incentives to PUDs in commercial revitalization districts. So that's the sort of things that I'm terming guardrails, and I hope the council will consider forming a study group in the future. While I got a few seconds, I would also like to indicate that I fully support Bill 6021, the unruly gatherings legislation that you'll be discussing later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rockel. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Beth Miller. Ms. Miller?
Yes. Thank you. I am speaking on my own behalf, not as a representative of any organization. And I believe that all my concerns have been addressed by Mr. Bostic and Mr. Marks with not making a change to the hearing officer's basis for review. So I appreciate that very much. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Alan Zuckerberg. Let's see if I can, Mr. Zuckerberg, on our list. I do not see him. I'm not sure if he had to jump off. I thought I saw him on earlier, but he is not on our attendee list. So I will go to our next speaker, who is Guerra. Are you there, sir?
Oh, hello. Hi. How are you? Good evening, Mr. Chairperson and County Council. Like Ms. Miller, my concerns have been allayed regarding, removing the amendment of Section 32-4-25C5. I think my concern and other community land use activists were the fear of removing adherence to master plan concepts, oversight by the planning board, community input and whatnot. I thank you so much for removing that thing to allay our concerns. We all know that PUD legislation is an important tool to bring about meaningful redevelopment of our ailing commercial corridors that I think are in all districts across the county, and that such development can bring about meaningful vibrancy and environmental improvements and bikeability and walkability in Baltimore County. I think that's so important, but I'm sure that the council knows better than anybody how our citizens are very skeptical of the development process, and that they're tired of, decades of car-driven infill development that repeatedly receive variance after variances and changes to zoning laws. And, I would just like to remind the council that, according to national planning experts like the Urban Land Institute, that in order to engage a development-weary public, that the citizens must know that they matter, that sound planning principles are in place, and that areas are being targeted not only for development, but also for protection. And this is why the master plan, community plans, and planning guidance from professional planners is so important. And again, why I thank you for offering that amendment to protect those important aspects of the development process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it on the speakers? Chris?
Yes, apparently Mr. Zuckerberg, I believe he was on earlier. Maybe he had to step off, but he is not here now. So, yeah, he's the speaker.
Okay, I want to thank each and every one of the speakers for your testimony. We certainly
Mr.
appreciate
Chair.
it. Yes, Councilman Patoka. Yes, Councilman Patoka. Yes, Councilman Patoka.
Well, I was just going to say that I am 100% certain that Mr. Zuckerberg will share his concerns with me at the next community meeting I see him at. And so I will be happy to share those concerns with the council.
Well, thank you very much. And again, I guess having no more comments, I want to thank you again, Councilman Marks, for your leadership on this issue. Thank you, Councilwoman Bevins, for joining him. And I'm in good company in joining you two in co-sponsorship of this bill. So thank you, Mr. Boswick, for your explanation.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom.
Now we will move on to page 10. Mr. Marks, design review area, Bill 5921.
Sure. You'll recall, and I mentioned this earlier, that last month we created a commercial revitalization district in the Honeyville area, and this would, this would apply, allow for design review panel oversight of that area.
Okay, are there any questions or comments from any of the members? No speakers, Chris?
No, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marks. We'll move on to page 12. Mr. Marks, social host.
Thank you very much.
Item that you've been providing a lot of leadership on for many years. Go right ahead.
Well, thank you very much. About half a decade ago, the county council passed a legislation creating a social host pilot program in two parts of the county, in Towson and in the Catonsville area. And the idea was to deter unruly disturbances, that there would be a series of escalating penalties applied both to tenants and landlords in these areas, with the goal of making a disincentive for unruly disturbances to occur. The program has worked, particularly in the Towson area, which I represent. There has been a significant decrease in complaints, and it is now time, I think, to extend this countywide. We cannot make this a permanent legislation just for a specific area. That's why we created a pilot program that has to be renewed every few years. But when I think about this initiative, there have been many times when people throughout my district would like to have this sort of protection. So that is why I'm introducing this bill to make the social host ordinance a countywide initiative, to end the pilot programs and to make it apply everywhere in the county. I think it's an overdue initiative. I do want to acknowledge and thank Scott Schellenberger, who's the state's attorney. He and I wrote an op-ed that was in the Baltimore Sun a few weeks ago. I want to thank the Baltimore County Police Department for their implementation. I want to thank a lot of the stakeholder groups. But I also, in particular, want to thank Paul Hartman and the leaders of the Towson community who have really been instrumental in helping develop this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Marks. Any questions or comments from the members? None?
Mr. Chair, I have a quick comment.
Go right ahead, Councilman Crandall.
Councilman Marks, once again, thanks for your leadership on this issue. I think that, the genesis was Towson and some university students getting a little out of control. But I just learned of an event that I haven't been able to verify yet, that there's a house in my district that is apparently holding almost nightly parties, charging for admission, maybe even charging for alcohol on at a private residence, and having this this would amount to a huge party in the evenings in a residential neighborhood. So it's not just germane to Towson. So I am supportive of your measure to make what is worked as essentially was a pilot program for your original legislation to make it countywide. So thank you for your work on this.
Well, thank you. And the intent here is also, unruly disturbances, particularly a pattern. If police are called to a property, they can decide whether or not to issue a citation. They're not going to be targeting a birthday party, that is not out of bounds. And we're really looking for those repeated instances where, quite frankly, a message needs to be sent. But Councilman Crandall, I want to thank you, and you've illustrated for me how this can be a countywide problem.
All right. Thank you very much. Any additional questions or comments?
We do have speakers, Mr. Chairman.
We have speakers.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Mr. Schellenberger is on, so he is our person to testify.
Great. Thank you all so much. Chairman Jones, members of the council, thank you for having me on. I'll be quick. I'm here in support of the Bill 60-21, social host unruly social gatherings. For several years in the Towson area, college students caused a lot of problems in the neighborhoods over in that area. The laws on the books at that time, this is back in 2013 through 2015, were fairly limited, and it resulted in the community and the police department constantly chasing down one party after the next. It frankly was a mess. In 2016, this council passed a pilot program to cut down on these unruly parties in the Towson area. At some point, the law was expanded to the area around UMBC also to cover that college area. And an amazing thing happened, and that is things got a lot better. The bill worked. It worked so well that the program was extended. It was pilot for another 5 years, and it currently expires in 2022. The key to the law is not only the ability to hold the people at the party responsible, but it's also the ability to hold the owner or the landlord responsible, even if they aren't on site. And that's one of the key elements, because what we were doing with regard to noise and unruly social gatherings is holding the owner responsible. And we do that in all areas of the law. We do that when it comes to where vehicles park. We do that when it comes to the trash pickup. And so now we moved into that area for the owner to also be responsible. Now, the important thing to remember about the success of this law, just because your state's attorney is here who prosecutes criminal cases, this law does not impose criminal penalties. It's a civil violation against those who have the parties, and a civil violation against a landlord. And a very important aspect of this that our police department handles very well is that, particularly with regard to landlords, they have to be given a warning first. And so they have to be notified that this is a problem at this location and you need to take responsibility. From 2019 to 2021, February of this year, there were 46 citations had been issued in the Towson area, and most of them were warning letters. Now, I candidly admit we still have a little ways to go. We still have plenty of work to do in the Towson area, but I'm here to tell you that this program has worked in Towson, and it certainly seems that we should apply it to the entire county. And frankly, we should stop making it a pilot program so that we have to come back year after year. If it works in Towson, why can't it work in the entire county? And why can't it be used for me to help Councilman Crandall out with the issue that he just brought up? And Todd, I would be happy to take your email or your response to let me know where this location is so we can direct our resources with other areas of the law to deal with what you just described recently happening. So I'm here in favor of this bill, happy to answer any questions, but I have a list of locations where people have been cited. They're all in the Towson area. That's the 46. And there have been a number of owners who have gotten warning letters, and then you don't see the address again. And that's what the goal of the bill is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schellenberger. We certainly appreciate you coming to testify. And I remember when you were, I guess thinking how far we've come. I remember when we were discussing this in the Plume Room in Towson.
Yeah.
And that seemed like such a long, long time ago. Here we are off into space somewhere, all virtual and pumping it in, so to speak.
It was a long time ago.
Absolutely. Are there any other speakers, Ms. Belcastro?
Yes, Councilman. Our next speaker is Erin May. Let me find it here. Ms. May?
Yeah.
Hello.
Before Ms. May, let me just say,
Sure.
Mr. Schellenberger, again, we appreciate you being here. Appreciate your testimony, your work. Appreciate David's work on the issue. And I think it's reasonable that we have some discussions later on about maybe a countywide issue. And maybe it can't hurt and can only help. So go right ahead, Ms. May. I apologize for interrupting you, and I thank you for coming out to speak.
Thank you. My name is Erin May. I am the owner of 117 Hanover Road in Reisterstown, where I have lived since February of 2019. A few weeks after moving into the house, there was a party at the rental property immediately next door, 119 Hanover Road. At that time, I thought this would be the only party, as now the tenants knew I was living next door. But throughout 2019 and 2020, the parties continued. In 2021, I have contacted police regarding 5 parties that have occurred on the property all since May 1st of this year. The most recent party was on Saturday, June 26th. This is a rough timeline of the day. A large marquee tent was erected on the property prior to 8 a.m. Throughout the day, tables, chairs, and decorations were added. 6:45 p.m., what I can only describe as a sound check of a PA system began. By PA system, I mean microphones, amplifiers, and speakers that push out very, very loud music and sound. At 7:15 p.m., the music begins. It was so loud in my house, it was as if a live music venue was in my living room. At 9:21 p.m., I realized I had a message from my neighbor asking if I was going to call 911. I responded I was going to wait until 10 p.m. because I was afraid if I called too early, the police would say it's early and the neighbors are allowed to have parties. Then I looked out my living room window. When these parties occur, I close the curtains in an attempt to have some semblance of privacy and to avoid spotlights that are aimed directly at my house. It is after 9 p.m. with loud music, spotlights in use, and firecrackers going off, with cars and people, bottles in hand, everywhere in the yard. And there was also a saddled horse on the property and people riding it. Horses can easily become uncontrollable, harming people and damaging property. All of this is occurring mere feet from my house and on a lot that is less than an acre. At 9:26 p.m., I called 911. At 3 a.m., people were still leaving the party. I do not want any considerate and conscientious Baltimore County residents to have to deal with a situation as I have. I believe that notifying the property owner in a rental situation will result in parties being stopped and allow police resources to be used for other matters. I am asking and imploring all members of the Baltimore County Council in passing Bill 60-21 and ensuring its full enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. May, for your testimony, and it speaks to Mr. Schellenberger and all of our comments today about maybe looking at an expansion. Ms. Castro, the next speaker.
Our next speaker is Rebecca Regal. And I believe she is not on as an attendee. So I will move on to our next speaker who's registered, and that is Paul Hartman. Mr. Hartman.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm here representing the Towson Communities Alliance, an umbrella group that represents 30 community associations in Towson. And you've heard from Councilman Marks and State's Attorney Schellenberger about how well the social host ordinance has worked here. And, you know, not being perfect, but it's still very well liked. And as you know, over the years, the pilot program was expanded geographically because the next neighborhood over said, hey, we like that. We want that too. So I can see that it would work very well being countywide. It's been applied to non-student situations on occasion, so it doesn't necessarily have to be tied to the proximity to a university or college. So I think it would be very good to discontinue the pilot program, but make it a permanent and countywide law. So thank you to Councilman Marks for initially sponsoring the legislation, also the other council members who co-sponsored the various amendments to it over the years. And hopefully the council will see fit to pass this new bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for all your leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman, for your testimony. Chris?
That was the last speaker for that item.
Last speaker. So again, I want to thank all the speakers for testifying. Thank you so much. We certainly value your comments and appreciate you taking the time to testify. And again, Councilman Marks, thank you for your leadership on the issue. And Mr. Schellenberger, we certainly appreciate all your work and effort and appreciate you keeping us safe and taking the time to come here and spend some time with us today. I know you're here from the very beginning. It's been a long meeting, getting close to 3 hours. Why don't we go with page, let me see what we're doing now. Page 14. Bill 6121. Mr. Marks. Mr. Marks, Councilman Marks show.
Last one for me. So this legislation implements the recommendations of a study group that was led by the planning department, looking at the standards for dormitories and purpose-built student housing. It includes a list of criteria that we should be looking at when a dormitory is proposed. The work group had a significant representation. It included community, business, governmental, legal stakeholders. I think it produced a really good report, and I'm happy to introduce this bill.
Thank you, Councilman Marks. Any questions or comments? Any speakers, Chris?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have 3 speakers for that item.
Okay.
Our first speaker is Patricia Malone. Ms. Malone?
Good evening. Sorry for the fire engine going by. I'm right here in Towson.
No, we're grateful for the fire engine going by.
That's true.
They're going to save some.
That's a very good point, Chairman. Thank you for
most important services we provide as the government is public safety.
That is correct. Thank you for putting things in perspective.
Yeah.
Tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of Shepherd Pratt on Bill 6121. In 2002, my firm represented Shepherd Pratt in a zoning request to permit a portion of its hospital campus to be used for the construction of dormitory buildings to provide housing for Towson University students. That request was approved, and American Campus constructed the buildings, and under a lease with Shepherd Pratt now operates University Village, which consists of 6 dormitory buildings to house college students. Just for those who don't know, the buildings are on Campus View Drive, directly across from the Center for the Arts building. Under Bill 6121, these buildings would be considered purpose-built student housing because they are off campus from Towson University, and they would not be permitted at all under the DR zoning in place on this portion of Shepherd Pratt's campus. Certainly, the intention of this bill is not to take functioning, well-run dormitories out of operation. Therefore, I have offered an amendment that would add very clear language confirming that the provisions of this bill would not apply retroactively. The proposed language contained in Section 2 of the bill is not broad enough to protect Shepherd Pratt. So I ask you to consider the language that I have proposed, which is virtually identical to the grandfathering language from the impact fee bill. That language would, in fact, protect Shepherd Pratt's, the dormitories that are on Shepherd Pratt's campus. I have also offered some suggested changes to the definition of dormitory, which Chris Mudd from my office is going to talk about in a few minutes after me. I would just like to point out that the inclusion of the term healthcare institution in the proposed definition of dormitory, as opposed to the purpose-built student housing, the inclusion of the word healthcare institution also has the potential of impacting Shepherd Pratt, which has residential programs on its campus associated with the hospital. It just creates some confusion to have that term in there. I'm not sure how that got in there. And also he's going to speak about the inclusion of religious institutions in there as well. So at a minimum, I'm here on behalf of Shepherd Pratt to ask for you to consider my proposed amendment to Section 2, which would add the grandfathering language. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Ms. Malone, wait 1 second. We appreciate your comment, but don't go anywhere just yet in case Councilman Katz. Councilman Katz?
Yeah, thank you very much. Patsy, I'm a little confused by this bill, and I was just, my question is, if there's property zoned MLIM anywhere in the county, does this bill give developers the right to build a student dorm on that property?
I would say that now there's a difference between dormitories and student housing. The intention of this bill, in my understanding, is to deal with the situation for housing college students. So they came up with a new term to deal with that, purpose-built student housing, because the term dormitory is sort of antiquated, I guess, at this point in time. So if you sorry.
Go ahead. So there's properties on York Road above the Beltway that are zoned MLIM.
Sure.
Does that mean that now by right, the owners of that property can build a student purpose-built student housing?
So if you look at proposed section 441.1, it says purpose-built student housing shall be permitted in all zones except the following. Now,
right.
The ones that are excluded are DR, the R zones, which are really office residential zones, and the RC zones. So under this, I would say yes, and under the way this is written now, it would appear that it allows purpose-built student housing in the manufacturing and business zones.
So it could be built in Hunt Valley, there's or anywhere in the county which is zoned MLIM, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that I would like to exempt out the Lutherville, Timonium, Hunt Valley area from this bill because it just would go against everything that I've been working on in the district. So I will propose such an amendment.
I'd be happy to support that, Councilman Katz.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ms. Malone, thank you so much for testifying. We certainly appreciate it, and we certainly, I'm sure Councilman Marks will be in conversation. We certainly support Shepherd Pratt, and they're an important institution in our county, and we don't want to do anything to exacerbate the problem of student housing. Next speaker, Ms. Del Castro.
Our next speaker is Chris Mudd.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mudd.
How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Council President Jones, and good evening, all other council members. I'm here, as Ms. Malone stated, to also testify on Bill 6121, but more related to the definition of dormitory itself. The zoning regulations currently, even before this bill, allow dormitories in certain zones. And in some zones, they're permitted by right, and in some zones, they're permitted by special exception. This term was never previously defined except as applied in the Owings Mills MLIM zone. As Councilman Councilman Marks mentioned at the beginning, a task force was created last year and was charged with coming up with the recommendations for defining dormitory and for regulating off-campus student housing as a result of several pending projects that were associated with Towson University. It was clear that this exercise was about finding a safe and efficient way to facilitate and regulate off-campus housing for college and graduate-aged students. I was actually a member of the task force, and as was indicated before, members of the task force included stakeholders such as local businesses, local business organizations, elected officials, community associations, attorneys like myself, and area universities, including UMBC and Towson University. And it should be noted that among the task force members that were not included were members of religious institutions, healthcare providers, or secondary schools, like the private schools that exist around Baltimore County. I mention this because the task force ultimately suggested a new term for purpose-built student housing to describe the use as reflected in Bill 6121. We worked through 4 sessions the task group did, or the work group did, to provide an input and definitions of purpose-built student housing. And the definition that appears in the bill fairly represents those efforts of the work group. Prior to the issuance of the final report, there were concerns raised about leaving the term dormitory in the BCZR without a definition. It was brought up during the last meeting, and to my knowledge, we never really discussed as a group how dormitory would be defined, only that it perhaps deserved a definition. And I most definitely do not recall any discussion of the application of the dormitory definition to the healthcare industry or secondary schools or camps or monasteries or religious institutions like it now appears in the bill. And as I noted before, none of those groups had a seat at the table to discuss the issue in the work group. And nor would we expect them to, because the work group was handed the task at hand to determine how to safely and efficiently find off-campus housing for college and graduate age students. Ultimately, the bill that's before you includes a definition of dormitory that we think is over-inclusive when it includes references to healthcare institutions, educational facilities, camps, monasteries, or religious institutions. And inclusion of that language would have unintended consequences to potentially have uses like certain secondary schools who have on-campus housing and have been able to do so by right for years might now be required to have a special exception because they are suddenly found to be in this definition of dormitory. So as Ms. Malone stated, and I'll wrap up, as Ms. Malone stated, we've offered a proposed amendment to Councilman Marks for consideration and for consideration by all the council members that would more closely tailor the dormitory definition to basically be similar to purpose-built student housing for college and graduate age students, but limited to on-campus of colleges. And that actually reflects how dormitories used throughout the zoning regulations now, where it's tied to the private college use as it appears in different use categories. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mudd. Are there any questions or comments from the members? Again, thank you again, Mr. Mudd and Ms. Malone, for your testimony. We certainly, don't want to have some unintended consequences. Just earlier today, we had an opportunity to, pass a bond issue that would help McDonald School. We don't want to have unintended consequences where we doing something that's going to harm other institutions at the expense of someone else. So I'm sure Councilman Marks will work on it, and we'll make a determination of where we go Monday. So any additional questions or comments on this issue?
Chairman,
Yes.
we have one more speaker.
One more speaker.
One more speaker. Ms. Beth Miller. Ms. Miller?
Yes. Mr. Jones, I just want to say I really enjoy your enthusiasm for speakers.
Oh, well, we appreciate you taking the time to come here because we all work for you. And we get very excited. And I say this often that, we learn so much from the speakers who take the time to let us know. I mean,
I hope I can.
Us council members like to think we're pretty smart and we have all the answers, but don't tell anybody we really don't have all the answers.
Well,
We really need your help.
You've given me a lot to live up to now. So I am testifying on my own behalf, not representing any organization. And I want to thank the planning department and Councilman Marks and the other stakeholders, organizations and participants who worked on the report leading to this legislation. Obviously, a great deal of thought went into it. I am an outsider to the process, but I have a few observations and amendments I would appreciate being considered. First, I would like to see more specificity made to the requirement to provide retail space on the ground level of purpose-built student housing developments. I spoke to some members of the work group, and they told me that they wanted developers to make a good faith effort to lease retail or office space on the ground level if most of the other buildings on the street have retail. I feel the legislation should require the ground floor to be designed to accommodate retail or office space, and the developers should be required to try to lease the space for a minimum period of perhaps a year before asking permission to convert that space to housing. If the space is designed for a parking garage or with low floor-to-floor heights, it will preclude the conversion to retail or office space should market conditions change in the future. In the downtown Towson district, Bill 6121 would effectively weaken the design guidelines, which call for retail and office space on the ground level of all new construction, with no provision for if it's not possible. We've already seen this play out on Chesapeake Avenue with the construction of the Atlas student housing, where the developer simply said he could not lease space on Chesapeake Avenue despite having a captive audience of hundreds of students in the building above. The parking garage was subsequently constructed, and it defies every guideline promoting walkable design. My second concern is that you please specify that buildings must have a public transit stop. As written, a university shuttle stop might be considered a transit stop. Towson University has a shuttle that travels all the way to Cockeysville for students, and I'm sure would travel anywhere it needed to. My understanding was this was intended to be purpose-built student housing that was not constructed so distant from county universities and colleges. And finally, the report included no recommendations to increase the applicable bulk and density regulations by 150%, as is found in this legislation. This increased density could be highly undesirable to some adjacent properties and goes to Councilman Catch's concerns for his district. As Mr. Mudd indicated, the impetus for the bill came from plans for Towson University. There are at least 2 sites specifically kept outside the DTD due to the desire to create a transition to higher density, one of those being the American Legion site. Increased density might also create an incompatibility between the higher density and the allowable height permitted on the site, leading to the request and inevitable granting of a waiver of the height restriction. Please delete this provision from the legislation. Increased density near colleges and universities is more appropriately examined in the master planning effort that is currently underway. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miller. And we appreciate all the speakers on this very important issue. Are there any additional questions or comments from the members? Hearing none, we will move.
Mr. Jones, if I may just briefly, I think the only thing I would like to add to the comments that have been made, the testimony is, I don't know, we didn't just make this stuff up. It actually did come from the report that was generated pursuant to this task force, and that was approved by the planning board. So the definition of dorms was in that, and that's where the language primarily came from. And the other items that are in the bill were from that document. So we're happy to make changes as directed, but I think it's worth noting that we didn't just come up with this stuff. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I appreciate it very much. And we know a lot of work goes into items to get it to this point. And, you know, we'll take another look. We appreciate all the comments of the individuals who spoke.
Certainly, and thank you.
Sure, thank you. Last, let me double check. I don't want to get anybody excited. Last, but certainly not least, page 16, Councilman Hatch. Zoning regulations.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, the Hillendale Country Club approached me. They would like to, they have 100 and I believe 45 acres, and they would like to have 2 building sites on that property. So I, of course, went to the community, the Jacksonville Community Association, and other communities and asked their opinion. And they do support giving Hillendale these 2 building lots. The problem is that these country clubs are having financial problems, and this additional revenue will help them over this rough spot. So the communities are okay with it. So put the bill in, and I appreciate the council's positive vote.
Thank you very much, Councilman Katz. Any questions or comments or speakers? Chris?
No, sir.
No speakers? Any questions or comments? I guess this will conclude our work session for today. Again, I want to thank all the speakers. I want to thank everyone for hanging in. It's been a long day. It's been over 3 hours, but you know, this is important work, and appreciate everybody hanging in. Have yourself a great night. Stay safe, and we'll see everybody next week. Have a great weekend, everybody.